Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of the Gaming on the Brain podcast. I'm Mark.
I'm Glenn. This week we're going to talk about an Namco classic, one of the best racing games that was ever created, Ridge Racer.
Ridge Racer, and we will be targeting the PlayStation 1 version, but we'll obviously, as we do, talk about some of the other versions, spin-offs, things like that, some of the special versions on the arcade and such as well.
Yeah, we decided to take a slightly different approach this time and focus more on a conversion of the game as opposed to the arcade version itself. But we've got the reasons for that, and we will go into that in the podcast itself.
Yeah, and by the way, Andy, you were right, it was Ridge Racer, so that was a very good guess. So, if you are listening to this episode, I will respond to you after the episode goes live to say well done on that one. The other thing of note, just want to say thank you to everybody who subscribed to the YouTube channel. I know it's not a big number, but we've hit a milestone of 10 subscribers. Woohoo!
Oh, no, that's great.
We do well. If you're enjoying the content,
AVGN should be shitting himself now.
He'll be shitting his pants, mate. Shit pickle will be definitely shitting it.
Shit pickle.
If you're enjoying the content, please do subscribe to the channel. Drop us some comments, give us a like. We want to engage with you guys, as we've said every week. One more thing as well of note, there is a plan to do a bonus episode for Pit Fighter, which will be basically a slideshow of the development documentation that Glenn managed to lay his hands on.
This should be interesting to some who like this side of things, concept art, and just what went into creating the game itself. I mean, I said that not everyone will be interested, but I always find this type of material it's just historical stuff that you wouldn't find anywhere else, really.
There's quite a package of documentation there, so I'll drop it onto a YouTube video, like a slideshow, like I say, and give people the opportunity to have a look and see what's there. That'll pretty much do us for the introduction. We will see you guys after the short musical interlude.
Yeah, speak to you soon.
See you soon.
You've got gaming on the brain.
Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of the Gaming on the Brain podcast. As always, I'm Mark, and I'm here with Glenn.
Hello there. How are you doing?
Hope you're all doing well. Today we've got something a little bit different from the norm. If you consider the norm to be the last few episodes, this was actually I asked Glenn earlier this week what he would like to do this week, and I must say I was absolutely shocked by his response, because it's not something that's in his wheelhouse.
Throw him for a loop just a bit.
Yeah.
Wheel being a key.
Today's episode, Glenn, you might as well say it because it was you who chose it.
Well, I decided to pick Ridge Racer.
Ridge Racer, and specifically Ridge Racer on the PlayStation, because we feel like it's the more complete game.
Yeah.
But we do want to touch obviously on the other versions.
Yeah.
And we're going to start off, I think, with the arcade version, Glenn. So I'm going to hand over to you for that if you want to have a chat about that.
Well, just with one more quick mention of the PlayStation version before I move into the arcade segment fully. I bought this game as part of a PlayStation package back in 1995. Got two of the games with it. It was Destruction Derby and Twisted Metal 1. All three games which I love because I love this type of game as well as beat 'em ups and fighting games. And I'd never played Ridge Racer in the arcade at that time. You've probably actually seen a pattern now with many of our podcasts that at least one of us has either played a console conversion before moving back to check out the original, like as in an arcade version. And to be fair, nothing is different here in this part. But the reason we want to focus on the PlayStation version is because, as Mark says, it's much more complete. It takes the arcade game and just builds on it in every single way. But we have to start at the beginning, and the arcade game was the beginning. And Ridge Racer came out in 1993. Namco, as many would know, massive, fantastic company that have been around for such a long time and still are, and have created some amazing games throughout the decades. And like I say, Ridge Racer, it stood out at the time because it was for contemporary, for 1993 at the time. I know you said 1995 there, but I was thinking about something else. For 1993, it was sort of that decade's outrun. to some degree. I mean, obviously, all of you will remember Outrun. Even in 1993, cabinets of Outrun were still kicking about, especially the Deluxe, which is the big red cabinet.
You never seen much of Outrunners, which was that.
Yeah, well, it was a sequel. Yeah, it had a Mega Drive version. That might be one interesting one for the future, because there's an interesting story with that, with the Mega Drive game as well. But yeah, so like I say, Outrun was what Ridge Racer did in 1986, what Ridge Racer did in 1993, in my own personal opinion. It's an amazing game. I mean, it looks fun. It's still, thing is, it's aged quite well. I mean, not everyone might say that. I mean, you can look at older polygons, and some people scoff where a lot of 2D sprite work just looks fantastic. So even looking at, say, Street Fighter 2 from 1991, still looks good. I mean, it's colourful, good animation. You know, they're good-looking games. Now, some of the earlier polygon games, I don't think they are, as much as the pioneers of their time. They don't look great now. They haven't aged well, but Ridge Racer is different. I think anything, again, my own personal opinion, but I think anything which was a driving game, so again, Ridge Racer and Daytona is another good example. Any of those types of games, the cars still look quite good because you've got much less in the way of angles and figures. So
that's right.
Yeah, you don't get angular looking human characters, in a game like that. So
all the racing games really lend themselves to the transition to 3D more than any other genre, in my opinion.
Ridge Racer came out in 93, so a little bit of history about its competitors as well, quickly. In the year it came out between two other very big racing games, both from a very big competitor, Sega, one of which was Virtua Racing in 1992. Now, this is a game that, in my opinion, again, the year, can't really say anything against the year, but for just 1 year previously, Virtua Racing's cars, I think their polygons have aged a bit more poorly, because
it was flat shaded polygons as well. You didn't have the garage.
That's it. Yeah, no garage. No. It's not going to look as good, but obviously to look at that game now, it hasn't aged as well. Whereas as again, obviously Ridge Racer has. And another competitor came out in 1994, which was Daytona Racing, probably Ridge Racer's biggest competitor, really, with it also coming out in the Saturn round about the same time. And I think Daytona looks great. That still does look very good, with
still fantastic,
very colourful graphics, so it's a worthy competitor to Ridge, And but again, so just for that, just so you get your head around a little bit of the competition, if you weren't around at that time, or you didn't really take a lot of interest. Ridge Racer's got probably one of the best soundtracks ever created. I mean, if you're playing that game in a deluxe cabinet and you're sitting there chilling to the tunes, honestly, it's just fantastic. Like Rare Hero, honest man, it's some of the music with. I'm not frightened to be called sad, but I ripped the tunes off the PlayStation CD with it being in Red Book, and I put them on my computer desktop at the time, so I'd listen to them all the time. They were fantastic.
There's a couple of the tracks on there.
They really get you going, don't they? They get you into the game and just get you pumping for the vibe of the whole game, really. So it's just fantastic.
Very, very well done, the music.
The Ridge Racer came out in two main versions. Now, there is some other versions in the arcade, at least one very important version, but we're going to go into that separately because it's got its own little history, and it's just very interesting anyway to touch on this other cabinet style. If I can even call it a cabinet, it's more of an attraction, isn't it? If we get into it, But anyway, it came out, as it stands, production model Ridge Racer arcade games came out in two versions. It was a standard cabinet, the deluxe cabinet. Basically very similar to what you've expected from, say, Outrun again, to compare. Standard is a stand-up cabinet with a steering wheel and gears and a pedal. So what you'd expect from the time. And your deluxe is your sit-down, full-size, well, almost full-size car. I mean, again, exactly what you've seen going through the 80s and the early 90s with VR, with Virtua Racing and such. But great fun to be able to play that with having some force feedback as well. And
wasn't there a triple monitor version of
there is, and again, I mean, we can touch on that now if you like, because although I've never seen a cabinet, and going by the history that I've looked into, now I know for a fact that the mystery version that we're going to touch on later also uses a 3 monitor system.
Yeah.
So if you look at certain emulators and you look at the version of this game in those emulators, they're using a 3 monitor setup. So I don't know to be 100% certain if they are one and the same, or if it is a separate 3 monitor game. What was that game called? Was it Ferrari F335?
Yeah,
with 3 monitors.
Ferrari F355.
Yeah, and that was an actual 3. Yeah, by Sega, and that was an actual 3 monitor setup. But that came out later, didn't it? A few years later.
that was a few years later.
But I wonder, so it's quite possible the very likely is a 3-monitor version of Ridge Racer out there that maybe has a wider cabinet or possibly a very different style of deluxe sit down.
It's the same. I've seen the cabinet on photographs, and it's the same sit down cabinet, except it's got a bigger, bulkier back end where you've got 3 monitors side by side.
There, so it does,
they look to be about like 32-inch monitors, like 3 of them mounted together, so it's a canny size.
So, and it looks like that version as well is based on regular Ridge Racer, though it's got no new features or cars or tracks or anything. So
no, as far as I'm aware, it's the bog standard Ridge Racer experience, but with triple monitor setup.
That means it is at least different enough from the attraction version that we'll talk about, because that's got 1 or 2, nothing massively different, but it's got at least 1 or 2 little features of its own that gives it a little degree of standalone. But obviously, again, just talking about Ridge Racer's 2 main competitors at the time, I still think, and not just because the article is about this game, but Ridge Racer just blew both of them off the track. I mean, Daytona not as much, because that still is a great game, and obviously you've got to remember there's a year between Virtual Racing and Ridge Racer, but it still was, for my own opinion, the best of the 3 of those those 3 big racing games.
I love the game of Daytona. I do. I really. I mean, Virtual Racing, I've never actually seen it in an arcade, if I'm honest.
I don't think I have, actually.
But Daytona, I've had many opportunities and have played Daytona many times in the arcade, and it's still a great game. But if I had Daytona and Ridge Racer sat side by side, I'd jump in Ridge Racer.
Yeah, it's games that's familiarity with me as well. I mean, I think, again, not to sway too far. I know we always do this, but I hope when we do sway a bit from the main article, we do just give you other little nuggets of info that are at least sort of somewhat important. But Daytona, obviously, when it came out in the Saturn, it wasn't very well received. The conversion itself was quite poor.
It was rough.
Draw distance and that, and rough graphics. So while the Ridge Racer PlayStation conversion was really well received, Daytona wasn't as well, which obviously to some degree, depending on which way you look at it, would either make the arcade game more or less popular, because more people might sort of, because they couldn't get their fix at home, they'd go back to play the arcade machine. But others who might have played it on the Saturn first and ever seen it in the arcade might say, I'm not touching that because it's shite.
Yeah.
So this could have worked either way, for or against the Daytona arcade machine.
Yeah, very true.
But anyway, just quick few mentions about the arcade game itself, just about its gameplay, what you get in that. I mean, again, great smooth gameplay. I don't need to go too much into that, because Mark will touch on that in the PlayStation version, where gameplay is extremely close, although there's some nuance.
Yeah, there's some differences in the drift mechanics, which I'll explain why we're talking more about the PlayStation version.
Well, in the arcade game, you have only one car, one playable car. All the rest of the cars, and is the Devil car in the arcade game? Actually,
don't know.
Don't think we've ever seen a Devil. So you've got 12 cars altogether, one of which you play as, which is the FA Racing, which is the red car. That's your standard car, and that's a car you play throughout the game. It's interesting to say it's red, just like the Ferrari from Outrun, and also I wonder if they've definitely looked at Outrun, even though they're not identical types of games. One being a race, like one being more of a track racing game, or one just being like more like Cannonball Run in it.
Yeah.
But anyway, so you have this playable car. That's all you've got. You can't upgrade everything. That keeps things very simple. Remember, it came out in 1993 as well. The game only has one main track. Now, for the this track is split into 4 different types of courses. Initially 3, really, but there is we'll say 4 courses. There's 4 different difficulties.
Yeah.
But the actual game itself has effectively 2 variations of the course. You've got an easy and a beginner and an intermediate mode, which are actually one version of the track. I mean, the 2 versions of the track are apparently identical. You get an extra lap on the intermediate.
Yeah, so I think the arcade as well as the PlayStation, what's called a beginner, that's 2 laps. Then intermediate or mid-level on the PlayStation, that's 3 laps.
Yeah.
And your car's faster as well. So you get a bit extra speed in your cars.
And there's is it called professional or hard on the harder mode? Advanced.
In the arcade, I think it's advanced.
Yeah.
And that's when you get the extra little bit of track.
Yeah, that adds an extra piece onto that track. So
which is just a pain in the arse.
It's the same base track, but it adds an extra segment on. And this advanced track is also used for a time trial, which you can play. So effectively 4 different difficulties. But that's enough about the base gameplay of the arcade machine, but I do have to touch on something else, which is a little bit negative. Now, back in 1993, Ridge Racer would have cost £1 to play. Now, I mean, if you're playing the game in an actual cabinet itself, you take an experience of the cabinet. I mean, it's almost a ride as well, so you can work with that basically. I mean, 1993 a quid was quite a lot still. Back when we're still playing games that cost 10 or 20 pence even.
Yeah.
Some games 10 pence, but mostly 20 by then, but still. And in and of itself, a £1 to play that game until you run out of time and failed on a race is more than fair. But Ridge Racer didn't work like that. What Ridge Racer did was you would pay £1 to play a track. Yeah. So I mean, if you ran out of time, you would like effectively lose, which means you have to put more money into to race again. Or if you beat the game, you were greeted with a game over, which I always felt so like crushing to think like you've just effectively completed the game in a way, because that's your game, that's the game you've played for. So if you paid for a race around the beginner track, and you probably will complete the beginner tracks, it's quite easy, then that's your game over, as opposed to then moving on to the intermediate track.
Now, mind you though, Sega was the same with Daytona and virtual racing. However, Sega Rally, which came out around a similar time as well,
slightly after that,
if you finished the race, you would go on to the next track, and you would be given an opportunity to continue,
which I think you should. I think you should always should have still,
until you ran out of time or you completed the game first. You know,
I mean, you said my own opinion there. I mean, without doing like a full-on review of Ridge Racer Arcade, because it wouldn't be fair to say it's a bad game. It's a great game still, but that is I still consider it a slightly miserly sort of feature, which, as Mark just says, though, was used anyway by its contemporaries. You know, so you can understand where they're coming from at the time. Plus, the price of these cabinets, I know for a fact, was astronomical. I mean, the price of a regular two-player fighting game at the time was no more than about $5,000, sometimes pounds, or £3,500 depending on where you came. But you could throw a figure. I've checked this out as well, in £5,000, which, I mean, it's still a lot of money, but it's not that much when you think if you pay that £5,000 for a cab, and there's people, and it's 50 pence a shot maybe at the time, and people are playing it every day, like maybe hundreds of people, you're going to make that money back after maybe just a couple of weeks, and then the profit starts rolling in. So if someone like Ridge Racer was like 10 times that much, then you can see where they want to keep the credits rolling in. So basically, if you wanted to do a full playthrough of Ridge Racer and you were a very good player, you're going to pay £4, not to complete all 4 tracks. So like I said, it's still quite an expensive playthrough. But we've always liked to look at it from the arcade operators side of the coin as well, and understand why costs are what they are, and why a game might be charged the cost that's been charged for, but that's the way it was anyway at the time. Like I say, I mean, in finishing, when I'm talking about the arcade game, I think it might have been the start of the decline of the arcades. I mean, me and Mark do have a slightly different opinion on this, which we will get to at some point in the future, because we've got a hell of a conversation coming up, which I'm really looking forward to, actually. One day down the road, not just yet. And to top it off as well, which Mark's about to talk about now, but when you do consider how amazing the PlayStation version turned out, and with its metric tons of extra content that was included, you can understand why maybe the arcades did start to decline in the early to mid-90s, So I mean, it is what it is. It's a time in the past that we've all loved, and it's been and gone, and it's sad to say sometimes, but that's the way it goes. And that's me finished. That's me done. I think we're going to let Mark have a little chat about the best version of Ridge Racer, which is Ridge Racer on the PlayStation. Over to you, mate.
But yeah, you're right. I think definitely around about that time, 1993, 1994, was when the arcades did start to decline. And Ridge Racer did definitely have a foothold in that for me. But I think you nailed it on the head when you said that the bigger cabinet was all about the attraction.
Yeah.
So you would pay your £1, you would get in there, you would have your 4 minutes worth of racing if you were crap, or less if you were even crapper.
I still think Outrun was about 50 pence back in the day, back in the 80s, 86, 87. So that's about right, though, I think, for the price.
If you were good
at it,
with the price. If you were good at it, you'd be finishing like the advanced in like a minute and 10 seconds per lap. So you 3.5 minutes, and that's it. But it was all about sitting in the cabinet, getting to have the clutch, do the drifts with the manual gear stick, everything like that,
You felt like you're driving a car.
Yeah, that's it. I must admit, I think, in all honesty, I've probably played Ridge Racer in the arcade 3 or 4 times, if that, because I couldn't afford to pay £1 a time.
Yeah,
when
that's
I was
where we thought
back in the mid-90s, and I had like £3 to go to the arcade with. There's no way I was spending one of my quid.
So like we've just said as well, a lot of games at that time, if you were going to play a beat 'em up or a fighting game, you still probably go pay 20 pence, weren't you?
Well, that's it. I could have 5 games on Double Dragon for the same price of a game on Ridge Racer. That would last us an hour and a half.
If you hunted about, you still could sometimes say a 10 pence game, couldn't you?
Yeah, exactly. So I think you know, that brings us nicely over to the PlayStation 1 and why, like Glenn said, it did contribute towards the decline in the arcade. And that being because it's just an absolutely fantastic conversion of the arcade game. Now, the PlayStation hardware is not up to the same standard as the Namco System 22.
Yeah.
However, it is based around the Sony PlayStation hardware anyway. The System 22 is. So a direct port was always going to be on the cards when the arcade game was being designed, in my opinion, and I'm sure we could clarify that somewhere. But it's a fantastic game. There's been a few cuts to the graphics in the frame rate, in the sense that it's now only running at 30 frames a second, where the arcade version runs at 60 frames per second. That and some of the the polygon models have been reduced in actual mesh textures and meshes and stuff. Some of the textures have been downgraded, that kind of stuff. But you were still left with what looked like an absolutely outstanding conversion back on the days on a CRT TV,
which is what would low resolution
anyway. Yeah. So you fired it up, and you didn't miss the better graphics of the arcade version.
No,
because the gameplay was there.
That's it. As soon as you got into it.
Now, one of the things I really love about this as well, I remember the first day we fired this up, Glenn, because like you said earlier, you got this as part of a set of games that you got when you first got your PlayStation. I still had like a Mega Drive or something at the time, and I remember Glenn getting his PlayStation out that he just bought, setting it up, and I'll have been badging him to play Ridge Racer because I'd seen it. I don't think I'd actually played it myself at the time, but I'd seen a couple of my friends play it and stuff, and I really wanted to play it because it was my kind of game. I love racing games. And anyway, I remember the loading screen.
Yes, definitely going to mention this. Like this, do you know what this? Before you say any more, Mark, though, I don't know about you, but this for me is I don't know, but I think it's a throwback to the 80s Commodore 64 games.
I was about
Mastertronic, with Invader load and that,
I've got it written down here. It's not the first time that's happened in a game. Yeah, and I've actually got a question. What was it again? Because I remember...
What, the first game?
I remember. Right. That it was back in the C64.
Well, that's what I'm saying. I played about 3 different games. Now, there was a game that played a bit like Grid Runner, and I can't remember its name. The tunes were fantastic because they were done by Rob Hubbard. You'll always remember the music from Rob Hubbard. But Invader Load is the one that I always remember the most, and that was on a load of old Mastertronic games. And in some cases, and there's jokes made about this a while ago, there's some games, right? So some full-price Mastertronic games, not budget prices for $1.99, some full-price $9.99 Mastertronic games that had Invader Load or one of the other mini games on the loading section that was better than the final product.
Yeah,
better than the and people were just loading in the game. Like, I know this, I've read this, and I talked to people back in school days who would stop the tape just so they could play Invader Load. Because if you stop the tape, you could play forever. And they would die. And this game loaded within about 30 seconds. So you paid £10 to play Invader Load. I mean, obviously it's good to say that Ridge Racer is way better than Galaxian. I mean, depending on how old you are, you might even disagree. But but it's a great version of Galaxian, isn't it? That comes.
It's just one wave of enemies, but if you get them all,
it's important. Yeah.
Yeah, if you get them all, you unlock the perfect mode. Essentially, you get a perfect little pop-up comes up. And basically, it unlocks an additional 8 cars, doesn't it?
Which is class. So, bear in mind, you start with 4 extra cars as well.
Yeah,
4 cars.
So we'll roll back there to we've jumped ahead of ourselves with the perfect bit, but yeah. So the port to the PlayStation, like I said, frame rate is reduced by half. Some of the graphics are dumbed down and everything. The music is all still there. That's perfect.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Now Red Book audio instead of the the actual hardware on the jamming board being used to create.
So if you haven't already rip it and play it in your car.
Oh yeah, good eye. So essentially you start the game with the beginner mode, the mid-level, the advanced high level, and the time trial modes open to play. You also start with 4 base cars, which
3 of them are new. New, but they were originally unplayable, weren't they, in the arcade game? So you've got your FA Racing and 3 more new cars.
You've got a
yellow Solvaloo, isn't it, as well?
Yeah, you've got the blue and yellow Solvaloo open. We won't go into all the cars, just one. I don't remember all the names.
Yeah, the stats as well.
And you've also got a car that's a little bit easier for handling through the drifts as well.
Remember the Pink Mabby?
Which is probably a good car to start with. It's the second choice. But then you go straight into like the beginner mode and such. I mean, there's nothing really in the way of saving and loading other than like your time records on laps.
Aren't all 4 tracks open though? Can you play?
Yeah,
any,
so,
yeah,
so
you
all
play,
4 tracks are
yeah.
open at the start. You can also choose between automatic and manual.
Yes,
which I'll
yeah,
be
that's
honest,
right.
I don't think I've ever played in manual mode on the
auto
PlayStation.
only. Yeah.
Yeah, you can choose your track, your music track straight out the bat, and then you basically start your race.
There's a nod back to Outrun.
Yeah. So the premise is simple. You'll do your laps, 2 for the beginner mode, 3 for every other mode. You'll finish the race, and then you'll get a little winner's badge over the top of that race. And you can still play the race again, but it just highlights the fact that you've beaten that race.
Yeah, you don't have to go back.
Now, once you beat all 4 races, including the time trial, which is the last one, you then get what is essentially a
bonus game.
Well, you get a game over, which is you've finished the game. Basically, you get a different music, you get a different replay.
Credits.
You also get to put your name in as well for like a high score, essentially. But then after that, you've unlocked the mirror tracks, which are called the extra tracks. So you get to do every track in reverse, and mind you, it's much harder. And when I say it in reverse, I don't mean you're reversing. It's mirrored, the tracks, obviously.
Although you can reverse up the track.
Actually, you can't reverse in Ridge Racing.
Are you sure? Sure you can, yeah.
There's no reverse.
Isn't it?
Not in the PlayStation one, anyway.
Oh, God. What?
Not that I'm aware of. I've never tried it, mine, but I don't
there you
think
go, as a challenge for them.
So yeah, once you finish all 4 extra tracks, which is a challenge, then you basically unlock the devil, assuming you will have beaten the devil car.
The ultimate car.
In the time trial, the extra time trial. Now, in that one, you instead of just facing the yellow Solvaloo, which is what you do in the normal time trial, you'll face the devil car as well, which you'll pass in the first lap. And now, if you can stay in front of it, you'll unlock that car. So basically, if you come first and win, you've now unlocked the 13th car, which is the devil car. And this devil car is, all the specs are fully maxed out on this car.
You feel you've achieved something enormous when you get that.
Definitely, yeah. It's, in my opinion, it's actually really difficult to handle that car because it's just too twitchy.
Yeah.
So, I mean, my favourite car is probably either the original the red one that you start out with, the FA Racing, or the second one, which is the dynamic drift.
Well, the FA was balanced anyway when it was classed as the balanced car.
Yeah.
I mean, but that was something else, and all you wouldn't even know in the arcade game that you were driving. This red car, apart from in the interludes and sort of technically not exactly cutscenes, but when a race has been complete in that way, obviously with the PlayStation version, another little bonus that we'll get is an extra view, as in you're given an out of the car view now, like what do we call that again? Right? It's not a bird's eye view,
external view, yeah,
an external view, camera. So you get your bumper cam, as they call it.
Yeah, bumper cam.
Although I've always just considered it in car, even I just do, even though it's not truly that. And as I say, an additional external view now, where you actually get to see the car you're driving, which it's nice to see that.
The external view. I mean, I can't play in that.
I don't play in that
mode. I just can't control drifts.
Yeah,
but I mean, the thing is, one other difference that I like about the PlayStation 1, they've done a lot of tuning on the joypad handling so that you can use the D-pad efficiently for the drifts. Now, in the arcade, when you're coming into a corner and you initiate a drift either by letting off the accelerator or tapping the brake, you seem to drift more realistically, I'd say, but realistically for a 1993 arcade game physics. But you can't kind of line up your drift as easy as you would in the PlayStation, where in the PlayStation version, you'll tap to initiate your drift, and if you're good, you can snap it back perfectly in the center after your corner, and you get a little kind of boost to your speed. It's not a turbo boost or anything like that, but it's kind of like an acknowledgement from the game. You've done that drift perfectly. You've lost no speed coming out of that corner.
Just a bonus, isn't it?
Yeah, where if you spend too much time trying to straighten your car up after the drift, you see like a noticeable drop in your speed coming out of that corner. So it's just the fine tune that they've put in, for me, makes the PlayStation game more playable than the arcade game. And I've played the arcade game several times on
this. I agree with this because said again, and it's just another little nail in the coffin for the arcade version, as well, isn't it?
I mean, it's lovely to have like the analog steering and stuff, right? Because you feel like you've got a bit more control naturally, but in the drifts, the PlayStation version just feels much snappier and responsive for some reason. And yeah, I haven't spent enough time with the arcade version to maybe appreciate what it offers through the drifts and that. But I haven't got the facilities to set up a clutch and everything at home to play on MAME, and
it's not going to feel the same anyway.
It looks like a pain in the arse.
That's the thing. I mean, if you're going to talk about the arcade game more, you really want to be able to test it out in a cabinet environment.
And believe me, mind, if I came across one of them cabinets, I have it here right now with us in the garage.
Yeah, I think we'll have to.
I'd be on it all the bloody time.
Well,
until I got bored of it anyway.
Since you mentioned it now, I looked at prices of cabinets a while back, and I seen a Ridge Racer cabinet for 500 quid, which I think is great.
Yeah,
that's really good. I mean, the thing was, it was called fully working. I mean, whether it had a few little glitches or little problems here and there, but even if it just had a few little technical issues, you know, for 500 quid, and it looked nice, the cabinet was in good cosmetic condition, I'd be like, well, for 500 quid, that's not too bad, you know.
If I think
and you could flip that in the future if you wanted to.
If I had to choose one arcade, I say racing game, so the genre racing game cabinet that I could have, it would probably be Ridge Racer. It would be the triple monitor version, I think.
Oh, I'd be happy with the standard deluxe.
I'd have to have the triple monitor.
I've never seen a triple monitor, and that'll probably be. I bet you that's about 3 times the price of the standard deluxe.
Yes.
Just because it's probably so rare. They'll all be rare now. Even the standard stand-up version will be rare now, and that'll probably be about the same price as deluxe. The thing is about cabinet size as well. For some people, obviously you've got to have a very specialist environment to put these in.
Yeah.
So the prices sometimes come down on the deluxe versions of games because nobody can physically keep them. I mean, it's bad enough keeping a regular sort of jammer cabinet for some. I mean, you know, me personally, I don't have a garage, so I'd still struggle at the moment to get a cabinet in my house, in my flat. Plus, my flat is upstairs, so I'd struggle with that.
Well, speaking about cabinet sizes and stuff like that, and you know, specific to an arcade, why don't you tell us a bit about that, the attraction one for the arcade that you were going to?
Oh Christ, yes, right. Well, I'm pleased that this. Well, since we're talking this, I'm going to talk about a few versions, and I'm going to keep the full scale, as it's called, to the last. But I'll just gloss over these few versions. It's just me and Mark have both got a few. I'm going to touch on a few different versions of the original Ridge Racer, and I am now, I've just found out today, going to touch on a version of Ridge Racer Revolution, technically, in the arcade.
Yeah.
But I will, because I put it on my list, and Mark's going to have a quick chat about a few other versions. Not all.
The mainline console versions, you know.
What we're doing is, I mean, we're picking and choosing a little bit, I know, but we're picking games that either were played in the series, or as sort of relevant to the Ridge Racer 1 articles.
Played enough to have a valid opinion on.
To some degree. Yeah. Like I say, one of these games I'm going to mention anyway, because I actually, going by the research I'd done, because I knew nothing about it, I'll be honest. This game, I thought it was actually a version of Ridge Racer 1. It's called Pocket Racer anyway. Now, this game is still on the System 22 hardware, so by the time it came out, quite sort of obsolete in a way. I mean, it came out in 1997. Now, if you check this game out, either on the cabinet itself or on a ROM, it has the date of 1996, but I've been assured by several sources that it did actually come out in around about March, I think it was, March of 97, which is quite late, but I thought it was a version of Ridge Racer 1. I've only had a few videos to look at.
Yeah,
so I haven't done
on YouTube,
yeah, it's very, it's uncommon game, very. But to my delight, really, because Ridge Racer Revolution never made it in the arcade in its natural form. So this game appears track-wise to be more based on that. Now, I don't know about cars, but it's called Pocket Racer because apparently it's aimed more at children. So I'm going to assume, for the moment, I could be wrong, but I'm going to assume for the moment that the game is possibly a little bit easier to play. Maybe it's a bit slower, or you get a lot more time. But it actually, what it gives you, and this is the big link to Ridge Racer Revolution, is it gives you the super deformed sort of Choro Q size cars where they've got big wheels and little bodies and that, so it looks cool. But there's an option there as well to turn the cars back into their normal Ridge Racer Revolution or Ridge Racer style. So it appears to have the same cars as those two games. Because, I mean, Ridge Racer Revolution's got almost the exact same roster, apart from a couple of extra secrets that we might get to in the future.
I think it's taken the music as well from Ridge Racer
it is
2 or also Ridge Racer Revolution.
Well, they use a lot of those same tunes between those three games, didn't they? Ridge 1, Rev and 2. That's why in Ridge Racer 2, well, isn't Ridge Racer 2 actually just the tracks of Ridge Racer 1 as well, but with the two cabinet?
Yeah,
cabinet.
And updated music.
Aye.
It's the music that you
so I knew, because I remember people, in fact, I think that was the whole reason why Ridge Racer Revolution was created, because Ridge 2 was not enough of a big step over Ridge 1, apart from the twin cabinet, to be a new game. So
one of the things I was going to touch on as well, but seeing as you've mentioned it, Ridge Racer Revolution actually had a 2-player mode, but it was console link.
It'll be link.
So you could-
yeah,
you
it would
could
be link.
link-
Ah,
yeah.
that's right. I
Which
thought
i-
it did, man.
Which is the same as the arcade, because in theory they link
That's
the
it.
same way.
That's all
So
it is.
network link, yeah.
And I mean, I know the link cable was quite rare. Not many people had that, but at least the option's there, you know.
Yeah.
And to be fair, because the PS1 was such a big console, if there was two blokes living together, I call them blokes, you're probably only about 11 at the time. If two kids were living together, you know, a mother and father there, two brothers living in the same bedroom, maybe good chance you'd probably have a PlayStation each. So I would say the link cable probably wasn't the most irrelevant peripheral ever created for the PS1.
Yeah.
Because at least, you know, if you bought this thing, you probably did have two PlayStations in the house. You may have done. It would have had some. It would have been useful. But anyway, that's a quick chat about Potter Racer. Another Ridge Racer 1 variant is called Turbo, and that comes built in as part of the Ridge Racer 4 package, which is a really nice little addition, really.
It's called the high spec mode, isn't it, in Europe?
Yeah, it's got a couple of names it has, and it comes on a separate disc, if I'm correct or
It
not.
did, yeah.
And I've looked. I haven't played this, but I shouldn't need to, because it is Ridge Racer 1. But the nice thing is, it's there's a few historical factoids that you see before the game even starts, talking about the game, and you can tell whoever's written these. It's only written stuff. It's not CG or FMVs or anything like that. It's just some written text. But it's like a nice introduction to what the disc is and to what you get on the disc. And they're talking about the history of Ridge Racer, including the whole series up until that point, which was Ridge Racer Type 4 that came out in 98 in Japan and 99 in the rest of the world. So, but it comes with at least a couple of different versions, and it comes with the very original PlayStation version at 30 frames per second. And you've also got an arcade mode that comes with 60 frames per second. Looking at the games on the disc, I think they're based on the PlayStation version fully. Just you get to play the PlayStation version with 60 frames and a higher resolution. So it looks like you're playing the arcade game, but with the PS1 features, which means technically Ridge Racer Turbo 60 frame version is probably the best version of Ridge Racer ever. You know?
In theory, yeah, definitely.
Because it's taking the best features of both versions. That's me. There is, to finish off before I talk about the full scale version, there has been a couple of mobile games out there, a couple of cell phone games. And I haven't seen them, and I haven't got any information on them. I did look. I'm assuming they're probably quite good, because, you know, if this had came out round about the Symbian era, you know, like when we spoke about Streets Rage 1's mobile phone version last time, which I thought was excellent, quite possibly the versions would have been fairly good. There might have been more pixel art as opposed to polygons, but I haven't seen them, so I can't really confirm anything. But
I don't ever remember seeing them on like the Play Store or Apple Store or anything.
There might have been obscure or just locked to Japan possibly, or maybe in Korea or something.
Yeah.
So we haven't seen them, so I'll not say any more on them. But the full scale version, which as we discussed earlier, is not really an arcade cabinet. It's more of an attraction. In fact, a good comparison, thought I'd bring this up now because you'll know this, is another Namco game, is Galaxian 3, which again is another massive environment scale game where you've got up to 8 players. This is Galaxian 3. Definitely worth looking at if you don't know.
Yeah, I didn't know about this.
Galaxian 3 plays like Starblade, which you'll know Starblade.
Right, yes.
Think of Starblade, but with 8
like
players.
Starwing.
I very much, yeah, because I've watched some
Star Fox, if you're not in the UK.
Yes, definitely. Because an English game called Star Fox, which was a lot of trouble over. But it is Galaxian 3 is an environment scale game, and I believe that came out slightly before Ridge Racer anyway. So that might have been the start of this. It basically, what you get with these two games is it's got to be a massive environment that you're playing them in. So you're not talking about a regular arcade. You could not get these in here. It has to be like a massive player centre. Generally speaking, it would be like Namco World had one, and but close to home there was one of these Ridge Racer setups in Blackpool Pleasure Beach. So obviously, if you live in England, that was here, and you might have played that at some point. I vaguely remember possibly seeing it myself, although I might be just imagining that because I would have loved to have seen it. Just as well, on a side note regarding that, anyone who's now like backsides are going that this machine, this setup has gone complete. It's not. It's being preserved, and there is a mystery collector, I think, in the UK, who's pretty much taken the whole of the environment, the whole of the attraction, and managed to keep and preserve it somewhere. So I don't know if it's set up to play anywhere in the country, but it's definitely it's at least gathering dust in a massive lockup somewhere. But he's managed to take the main unit, which, by the way, the big draw of Ridge Racer Full Scale is that you're actually sitting in a Mazda MX-5.
Yeah, or Mazda Unos Roadster.
Unos Roadster, yeah, that's it. Yeah, it's got the two names, and that's depending on where you're from. Is the Unos Roadster the Japanese name?
I believe it is.
Yeah,
Yes.
I thought it was. And the great thing is, this is not a fiberglass replica. I mean, even with Ridge Racer, the Deluxe cab, I mean, you're driving a small fiberglass replica, which is still massive. I mean, you put this thing in the garage, and it's going to be taking up a good half of the garage. You know, I said garage, but it's because it is an actual car being converted to work to play this game. So there's a few extra features. You've got a horn and that, and you've got wind blowing in your face from a mechanism that does that, and it's getting played on massive screens. And the other thing as well, I mean, the game is Ridge Racer 1, so you don't get extra tracks or any of the features from the PlayStation version, but the car that you're driving, when you do see it on screen, it is actually the Mazda MX-5 model and not the FA Racing. So only a small touch, really, and not a massive deal, but it's nice to see that they took the time out to change the model. The other great thing about this as well is that it's and this is the final little nugget of info, because it's quite cool. Is there was a Japanese setup which I think came from the Namco Play Center I mentioned earlier in Japan, and what's happened is it's good and bad. They deconstructed the whole of the attraction, so a lot of it was scrapped, but the car was turned back into a working, running Unos, or how you pronounce it, Roadster. Yeah. So that car is probably, or possibly, if it's still running, still out there somewhere. So I'd really love to hope, right, that, you know, 'cause the car is a 20-odd-year-old car, you know what I mean, still. So if that car is no longer running, that whoever owns it at least had the good sense to donate it to someone who would know what it actually is, so they can convert it back. So in the very least, they've got the original machine from the cabinet, from the setup, and then they could maybe just, because the ROMs do exist for Ridge Racer Full Scale, so it wouldn't be that hard to make a mock-up of what was the original attraction, but using at least the original car, which to me is the next best thing to having that full setup. So
the thing is, though, like you say, when they've took that car and they've transformed it basically into a proper car, they've known what they've done there, because at the end of the day, it was just a body.
Yeah,
that's all.
It's just a shell.
Yeah, so you've had to spend an awful amount of money transfer that body to a Unos Roadster.
But theoretically,
knowing that you're going to preserve this whole,
it is an official shell, so it's not a replica shell. So obviously, it would never have had the original engine put there and anything that would make it a roadworthy car.
Yeah,
you know, probably didn't even have working wheels. I wouldn't be surprised if the wheels were just like glued on, technically, you know. But you have a shell there that you could go back and say, right, as long as we've got everything else that we need for the car, we can turn it into a car. So it's not like they're basically like having to turn a model into a car, you know.
Yeah.
They're turning a car shell back into a working car. But I know what you're saying, though. Those people I would like to hope that obviously they knew exactly what they were doing, but they've let everyone else know that they were doing and all.
Yeah.
So that car, if it's seen on the road, or if it was seen on the road at the time, people who were relevant to that would at least know what it actually is. So, because I said, as far as preservation going, the talk I've heard is that the Japanese one and the one in Blackpool in UK are the two last Ridge Racer Full Scale attractions, like cabinet attractions. So there's no more left in the world. I mean, it always was going to be a limited thing. This thing's never going to be viable like 30 years later, you know. I mean, it's still an old game, you know, running on a system that's just too big to be viable, you know. I mean, why would you have a setup, which, bear in mind, I don't know how much this was to play, but I'll bet me way more than £1. So if the Ridge Racer Deluxe cost £1, this probably costs like £5 or something, you know. Bear in mind, it's a ride more than else, so it just wouldn't be viable in this day and age, apart from an extremely hardcore collector with a lot of space. Basically, was a hanger.
I would love to have seen it, but I'd have been too tight to pay for a go on it.
I think I would have played it one time just to say I'd experienced it, because no matter how much it was, as long as it wasn't absolutely extreme. But
it'll have been like £5 a go.
I would have said
at the very least £2 a go.
Yeah, maybe at least the very least, I think. But I would have definitely given it a shot just one time, just to experience the whole thing, you know. But I said again, it's been and gone. But obviously, the good news being that it is at least preserved to some degree. So that's nice to see. I say, Mark, I think I'll throw back to you actually and see what your thoughts are on a few of the games.
Before I touch on some of the mainstream Ridge Racer games in the series, because this episode's predominantly around the PlayStation 1 Ridge Racer, although so far you wouldn't think so. what we want to do, or what I would like to do at this point, is just remind everyone that Ridge Racer was actually one of the launch games on the PlayStation.
Yeah, it was.
Europe.
Yeah, a fantastic way to launch now, wasn't it?
Yeah. Now in Europe, we only seen 9 launch games, and I've got a list of them here. I'm going to very quickly touch on them. So there was 3D Lemmings. That should need no explanation. There was Air Combat, which eventually became what's it?
Ace Combat. Combat series, yeah.
Which, well, that's the American name for it, isn't it? Is that right? Ace Combat?
That's right, aye.
Yeah, and they're still going today.
Yep. Again, I say another Namco big series, you know.
Battle Arena Toshinden, which
that was the first fighting game, yeah.
Yeah.
The thing about Toshinden, just a quick word about Toshinden. I mean, it got completely overshadowed by Tekken 1 and obviously Virtua Fighter on Saturn. But Toshinden did start something, and it was very well received at the time, man. It's weird with Toshinden. Well, that's it. That's the weird thing with Toshinden was I think people were just so happy to have a 3D fighting game on their PS1, the brand new PS1.
Yeah.
So they had a competitive VF, obviously, on Saturn.
Yeah.
So it wasn't great. And some people, I think the sad thing is now, I always like to try and give every game a little bit of praise where possible, you know. I'm looking at you guys. It's the thing about it is it's just not aged well as against, say, the Tekken games, which obviously started very, very shortly after. So it's still got quite long legs as well. I mean, there's quite a few Toshinden games out there, but it is sad to see how greatly it was received at the time, and now, like 30 years later, 25 years or so later, it's like absolutely despised by many, you know. But its combat systems did start something off, which some other fighting games didn't have. I mean, it's the first fully 3D fighting game and all, where you've got actually rolling and moving in and out the scenery. Virtua Fighter didn't do that, you know. So it's still a pioneer. So as much as it's generally forgotten or even sort of like not really respected now, it still was a decent launch game for the time for the PS1.
There was Jumping Flash, which was like basically a 3D,
Robot Rabbit.
Yeah, 3D platform.
Very well received.
Attempt. There was Kill the Blood, which I don't even know what that is, if I'm honest.
It's a shooter.
Was it?
Yeah.
Right.
First person shooter, if I remember right. Yeah. And that got mixed to good. That got mixed to good reviews. So it still wasn't like a bad game, you know. It wasn't considered a bad game. It just sort of like it ended up getting swamped by all the way better games, which you've mentioned, at least a couple of them. So
there was Nova Storm, which was a port of a Mega CD and 3D game.
That's right, yeah.
Which was just like a Unreal
space shooter, Unreal like Starblade that was just mentioned. Was?
Yeah. There was a game called Rapid Reload, which is like a Metal Slug type game.
I remember the name, but I can't remember what that game looked like. I'll have to have a look at it.
Yeah, it was a basic run and gun game. Then there was Ridge Racer, and then there was Wipeout. And basically, I mean, look, out of Ridge Racer and Wipeout, I love the idea of Wipeout, but it's just not my cup of tea.
I think Wipeout had a very different vibe. Yeah, I think we'll always have a soft spot for Wipeout because of the British connection.
Yeah.
But the good thing as well with these two racing games is they're very different types of style. I mean, you've obviously got your more realistic cars, which would definitely have appealed to to petrolheads, you know.
Petrolheads, yeah.
To where obviously Wipeout you might have been more of a F-Zero fan, you know.
Yeah,
so
well, that's it.
Different style of racing.
Wipeout might have scratched that.
So you could easily have these two great racing games side by side with two different styles from two different development houses in different countries, different cultures, and then but you could still go and we love this game, but some people love this game as well, you know.
Now for me, all day long out of that launch lineup, Ridge Racer.
Yeah, definitely, without doubt.
It's even if I didn't know what Ridge Racer was, and I was in the shop looking through those 9 games when I was picking up my PlayStation for the first time, which was you, by the way, not me. But I think every box I turned over, I would have picked Ridge Racer up more than once and eventually took that one to the till with us. Because that game, for me, just looks the best and it plays the best. And, you know, it really attracted me. Anyway.
It's such as well, it's a loud and exciting game. So if you had a CRT in a Curry's at the time, that's a shop, that's one of our electrical shops we had in the UK, Curry's we would call that. Right? And so they were selling all those consoles. I mean, I remember Jaguars and 3DOs in there as well. No one touching them, but you'd have a PS1 connected and a Saturn. People would be playing Daytona on Saturn still. Yeah. I love the Saturn still. But Ridge Racer would be on and people would be just crowded around this, like even just watching it play. If it wasn't even like there wasn't a controller plugged in, there'd be people still just crowded around just watching what was going on a 14 or 16 inch CRT, and it was just great, man. So
just to touch on some of the other mainstream versions that we've got. So The Ridge Racer obviously released back in 1994 on the original PlayStation. As we've already talked about a bit, what a fantastic game. Loved it. Still do. Really enjoy playing through it again this week, unlocking everything, including the Devil Car. Fantastic game. I just love to come back to. Then shortly after in 1995, we got Ridge Racer Revolution, which was basically, it was just Ridge Racer, the game, the engine, everything. They created a new track for it. Again, you had four difficulties to play that track on, with the same kind of a little bit extra tacked onto the track.
It's a good sequel, I think. It's quite a good sequel. You got to remember something.
Didn't like the track as much.
I didn't know. I prefer the original track, but one thing I found with sequels in the 90s, and I think the trend might have started with Street Fighter 2, you know, but I mean, okay, Street Fighter 2 Turbo and Champion weren't technically called sequels, but what you'd do is you'd get an upgrade, you know, and it would just give you a small amount of extra features, just a little bit, and then sometimes called a sequel, or they might just call it a new edition, but it's technically a sequel, you know. But I think they could get away. Capcom was guilty of it, definitely. But they'd get away with just giving you a little bit extra for a bit more money. I mean, obviously, as games development was starting to cost more, I could see where they'd come from with trying to squeeze as much as they can out of a new edition. So, I mean, I thought Ridge Racer Revolution as a sequel was a decent one. Okay, I agree with Mark and say, yeah, I don't think the track's as good either. But they tried, you know, and the game is still good, and I had a great time with it. And you've got a couple of extra features and just a couple of extra new cars and things. So it doesn't give you an enormous amount of new content, but does give enough content to say, right, I've got Ridge Racer 1, but I want Revolution as well.
Yeah.
Because, as discussed previously as well, Revolution it's technically exclusive to PlayStation, although I said we've got a sort of arcade conversion, which is not exactly the arcade conversion, but there's some similarities between the two. But round about when Ridge Racer Revolution came out, Ridge Racer 2 came out in the arcade, and that was based more heavily on Ridge Racer 1. So as Revolution goes, it was a good home sequel, I think.
Well, Revolution took the music from Ridge Racer 2 as well.
Yeah.
Now, the next game in the series really was Rage Racer, but I've only played a little bit of Rage Racer back with a good friend of mine, Earl Belshaw, in the day when it first came out. And I'll be honest, I never really took to it. I think the biggest put off for me was the drift noise. Just sounded like a cat being shot and fed through a pasta maker or something like that. It just sounded absolutely horrendous. It put me right off, and it didn't feel like a Ridge Racer game either. The next mainstream game was Ridge Racer Type 4, and criminally, I haven't actually played much of this game either, although I know it's regarded as probably the best in the series by a lot of people. Now, for what I have played of it, I think it feels very satisfying to play, feels very tight. There's like 400 cars or something in the game.
It's got the Pac-Man car,
Yeah,
you know, the Pac-Man ghosts are driving their own cars.
I know.
No, it was cool, and I loved it. All four of the ghosts each of the cars has a sort of feature. Like one of them, he's slow, right? He's slow as fuck, one of them. Yeah, I think it might be Clyde, because they're all based on the real ghost, right?
Yeah.
But his car, you'll lap him every time, but he's got smoke billowing out the back constantly, so he's more of an obstacle on the track, and one of them's super fast and that, and one of them's squirrely as fuck and that, you know. And it's like, you know, so you know, knock these four, which are basically Ridge Racer 4's devil cars, because Ridge Racer's got its own set of devil cars now, which are extremely cool actually. So maybe one day for the future, but at the minute, but the newer sequels did change up a lot. Wherein like Revolution was, I mean, it kept the models of the first game and obviously of Ridge 2 and that, you know. Ridge Racer and Type 4 did change things up quite a lot.
Ridge Racer did. There was a new graphics engine, new game engine, everything like that. So, like I say, it never gelled with me. Type 4, I think, probably took what the Ridge Racer engine was and built on that and delivered a game that, in my opinion, was far better than Ridge Racer.
Yeah, a lot of meat on it. I
still loved Ridge Racer 1 more than Ridge Racer Type 4, maybe because I just never put enough time into Type 4. I will go back eventually and play some more of that game, definitely. Next up in line was Ridge Racer 5, which came out in 2000 on the PlayStation. I think it was a launch game, if I remember.
I believe it was PS2, yeah.
Again, I didn't put a lot of time into this, and the reason
maybe I haven't.
I didn't enjoy the music. It wasn't my cup of tea. It was more like house, like garage type stuff and whatnot. And although the game seemed to play fine and the graphics were more than adequate for a PlayStation launch title and that, I never really bonded with that one. near that same time, they were actually releasing Ridge Racer 64 as well.
Which I've had no time with. I've never touched 64 at all.
Yeah,
I know it's a different game from Ridge 1. It's its own thing, as far as I know. But I don't. So, what is that close to any other version then? Is that based on, say, maybe Ridge Racer or Revolution, possibly?
You know, it is. I used to have it back in the day, and I played bits of it here and there. And I remember just thinking it suffered from the typical things that an N64 game suffers from. It seemed to be slow. It suffered from a lot of the fog. I mean, everything looked okay in that, and it played okay, but it just never felt anywhere near as good as the original Ridge Racer, in my opinion. So I can't say too much about it, other than, you know, it's worth a try if you like the Ridge Racer series. It's definitely worth a try, especially now when you can emulate, you know, Nintendo 64 in 4K and take away the fog and increase the draw distance and stuff like that. It's probably a much better game now, to be honest.
Maybe they should do that with Superman 64. That's a story for a day.
Fix that pile of
There's a story for a day, maybe.
Next up in line, I believe you had the Ridge Racer on the PSP. Now, from everything I read, it was a good game. Felt nice and tight to handle and everything. I personally never played that one, but I have played its sequel, which we'll talk about in a bit more depth shortly. Ridge Racer 6 was released in 2005 on the Xbox 360. Now, I did put a ton of time into this one. From what I understand, I think Ridge Racer PSP was the first game to introduce the nitrous into the game, so you have 3 nitrous storage tanks that you could use. Now, Ridge Racer 6 had the nitrous in as well. It had a ton of tracks in. The music and everything was great, pulled in a lot of the old tracks and everything. Game played very tight and everything with the analog controls and stuff. Really good game on the 360. It's actually playable now as well on the Series X and everything in upscales. So if you can get your fingers on a copy of Ridge Racer Type 6, I'd recommend picking it up because it is a very good game to play. The next one in line that I played, and I don't know if it was Ridge Racer 7 or Ridge Racer 2 on PSP came out before the other or whatnot, but I played Ridge Racer 7 on the PS3. Now that felt like the taking Ridge Racer 6 from the 360, improved the graphics a little bit. It was actually one of the only games that ran in 1080p at 60 frames on the PS3 at launch, and it had a 3D mode as well, so you could play it in stereoscopic 3D. Again, I think they added a few more tracks. They kept the nitrous in, stuff like that.
Yeah,
probably added a few other bonus things in, but I haven't had time to really look into it. But it played very well, exactly what you'd expect. Nice and tight gameplay. Again, felt similar to what Ridge Racer 1, where you can pull yourself out of your drifts really well and stuff like that. But for me, the next game that came out, which is Ridge Racer 2 on the PSP, that, in my opinion, is the crown jewel in the Ridge Racer franchise. Now, I've played this game to death, and I must say it was brilliant back on the PSP, but if you can get the opportunity to do so now, if you can emulate it on something like PPSSPP, you can actually notch it up to something like 4K. It's 60 frames a second anyway. It's buttery smooth gameplay, and it's absolutely amazing. You've got the nitrous, you've got extremely tight drift mechanics that you can negotiate your way out of any drift easily as you like. It's got the analog steering and everything, so you've got that extra little bit of control. It's basically got everything from all of the good Ridge Racer games throughout the, you know, I've got it written down here. We've got 18 years between Ridge Racer Arcade and Ridge Racer on the Vita, which we'll get to shortly. You know, it takes everything from all those games, delivers it in one package. Tons of cars, tons of unlockables, you know, just an absolutely awesome world tour mode and that. And for me, it's the game that you've got to play if you fancy revisiting Ridge Racer. Play Ridge Racer 2 on the PSP. So the next one, was you've got Ridge Racer 3D, I think, was the next one to come out, which was on the 3DS. Now, again, I've owned this, played bits of it. I remember thinking this was like a port of Ridge Racer 64. From what I've read, that's not actually the case. Apparently, it's got its own game engine with updated car mechanics and stuff like that.
Is it using models though from that game, maybe?
Well, I thought it did again, but I don't know if that's the case or not. But
the thing is, I've noticed that after once you get Ridge Racer Revolution out of the way, every game starts to bring its own its own cars to the game. I mean, like I say, Rage Racer's cars are completely different from anything before. They all have different models and different names. I mean, the Devil cars, I don't know if you remember, just obviously touching on Rage Racer for a second, we're going way backwards here.
Yeah.
But I remember the cars being split into 4 different manufacturers.
Yeah.
Each manufacturer had a set of vehicles that would start with like the lowest one, the weakest. You start with the weakest car and you work your way up, and they were clearly different strengths. So it wasn't a case of like you'd have, say, 12 cars on the track and you'd have 12 different cars from one manufacturer, because they were clearly in different tiers, and each, the great thing is as well, every single tier would end with its own, in inverted commas, devil car, because it was still generalized devil cars, but they were unique in very different ways. I mean, one of them was actually looked like a little Fiat 500, but it could go like shit off a stick, and it only had 1 gear. So providing you kept your finger on the accelerator, it would just get faster and faster and faster. So and it was tiny. So then that was a devil car, and that was the secret sort of $1 million car, because you had to pay for the cars. You had to actually spend credits on them. And there was one that was very clearly inspired by the original devil car. And say there was 4 different types. Again, they were all very cool. But like I say, starting with Rage, all of the different vehicles were now much, I mean, obviously better graphics anyway, but they were very different from what you'd been seeing before,
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. The next one after Ridge Racer 3D, it might have been around about the same time. That was Ridge Racer Vita, and I had this game, played for about 5 minutes, realised how shallow of a game it was, and never touched it again. And I just looked today out of interest, because I didn't know if it had updates that made it better or anything, but I think the general consensus worldwide on that one is that it was absolutely appalling. It was just a shell of a game, basically, which is a big shame. That was the last main entry into the franchise.
Yeah, that's maybe what killed it.
Aye, and if that was the intent, to release a half-baked piece of crap, then they should have known better than to do that, because at the end of the day, it's killed off what, for me, today would still be a great franchise, and I'd love to see like a Ridge Racer on the Switch or something like that, which is where
I don't think Ridge Racer will be dead forever, though. I think it's going to be one of the... It'll lie dormant for a while, like some of my other favourite franchises, and then just pop back up again with something new, and they'll look at all of the past games and that and give an idea about what really popped for people, and then you'll just see an amazing installment come out. So I don't think Ridge Racer's dead. Now,
there was a couple of little kind of other spin-offs from the main series as well. I won't go into it much. There was back in 2003 on the GameCube, PS2 and Xbox, they released R-Racing Evolution. I don't know if you remember that.
I do.
It was basically a simcade, so you could adjust your brakes, adjust your hand, and all that kind of stuff. And it had licensed cars as well. It was like Le Mans and stuff like that. And I remember playing it a little bit back in the day, and actually thought it was quite a good game. Like, it was a reasonable attempt at a typical Forza type game or Gran Turismo type game. Not as much in depth as those, but a nice like balance. And it played really well, if I'm honest. One I'd love to go back and maybe try a little bit more, now that we've obviously got...
You're getting cheap as well, they're getting out, probably.
Yeah, you
bought
can
the
pick it
original.
on the GameCube.
Just some of the stuff's quite cheap.
There was also a Ridge Racer Unbounded. Now,
I remember that one.
This one, I'm a bit torn over. I mean, it was Bugbear Entertainment who developed this.
Flat Out.
Yeah, exactly. And I think it was straight after the Flat Out games that they developed this. And now, I've tried to like it a couple of times, and I just can't get into it. There's like quite a bit of destructible parts in the city, and that way you can blow up like garage entries and stuff like that, and create like roadblocks for the other cars and stuff.
It's a European developer as well, though. You're moving away from the Japanese cultural style, so
it just, I mean, on the 360, it was like 30 frames a second. It played like a dog. Now the PC version, I think I've actually got it on my Steam account, would probably play a lot better at 60 frames and stuff, but I just haven't had a chance to really dive into that. But I think I will try it again, because I would like to love another Ridge Racer game that I haven't really played through, But that pretty much wraps us up for the main line and some of the spin-offs. I think I haven't really got much more to say, mate.
I think we should wrap up with a review.
Yeah, let's do
I've got a review. My review here is going to be probably the highest one we've done yet, because we have RC Ridge Racer PlayStation. Remember the review is about that version.
The main format for this podcast is the PlayStation one, so the review will be around the PlayStation version. Yeah,
and I mean, just going by the sheer amount of extras that the PS1 version has over its original arcade game, and the fact that the experience is still so close to the original machine. Like I've already said, I mean, and it's a little bit of a negative thing to say about the arcade, but the PlayStation version for me just makes the arcade game near, not completely, but near utterly redundant. Other than having that cabinet, other than having the cabinet, which I mean, again, you're paying £1 a time to play a single race on a lovely cabinet, and then that's it, that you're done, or you're going to pay another £3 to complete it fully and get no acknowledgement for actually doing it, So there you go. So you're guaranteed £4 down. That's 10% of what you'll pay for an original PS1 Ridge Racer back in the day.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Some shops sold them for 30 to 35 quid. Mm-hmm. You might have got second hand for 25, So, I mean, the amount, like I say, Ridge Racer PlayStation, 12 playable cars, Arcade 1. Ridge Racer 2 different views, Arcade 1. Ridge Racer 4 additional tracks over the Arcades 4. And said all you're losing, I mean, apart from the main one being the cabinet, you're losing a little bit of frame rate and slightly lower polygon count, I mean, so as a conversion, it's just superb, superb as conversion. I'll always try and avoid giving a game a 10 out of 10, since I always believe in you striving for a bit more. No anything should be considered perfect, because where can you go from there, So, but as a game to play, I mean, if you had never played the arcade game before, which bear in mind I hadn't before owning the PlayStation version, I'd say then that you are you've just scored greatly, to get this game. For me, Ridge Racer PlayStation 9 out of 10 without any hesitation. Like I said, it's just near perfection, and it still looks good now. Though it looks good, some 3D games, and I mean, for a good example, like I love the Twisted Metal games. Twisted Metal 1 does look very poor. I mean, and then this came out, a little bit later than Ridge Racer 1, but where Ridge Racer 1's like clean, simple, but nicely shaded polygon cars still look quite good. Ridge Racers just look like cardboard. Twisted Metals just look like cardboard cutouts, So I think Ridge Racers also aged quite well. So, I mean, we know this anyway, because you played a challenge just last year at NERG. There's NERG. There's a little shout out for something. The Northeast Retro Gaming. Expo, which is very good, but we went to last year's. We've been to the last 2 years, and last year's Mark played a Ridge Racer competition and come first. What did you win for that game?
I got a Thanos board game and a Nerd Cup.
It was great, man.
I drink out of the cup, obviously, but it's my favourite cup.
It's his favourite cup, aye.
It was better than a trophy, because I can actually use it.
That's what I did. That's all you need. You wouldn't even need a trophy. It was just the fact that you got it. You got there. Me, I was psyched. Just so you know, just for the record, and so all our millions of viewers can, of viewers can have a record of this. I was absolutely atrocious. But I hadn't played for years, to be fair, where he had.
That.
Yeah, you tell me you played the same night.
No, I did the night before.
So I played atrociously. But anyway, saying Ridge Racer for me, 9 out of 10. Near as perfect as you can get, and for a launch title, it's reasons why the PlayStation just blew the competition away. I mean, I am a massive lover of the Saturn, and I also respect and have interest in the bad consoles of the era, which are obviously like the 3DO, the CDI, Jaguar 32, CD32. I'm interested in all of them, and I like the.
Owned them all at one point.
Where we are, but I mean they're expensive as fuck now as well. But I like to still take interest in those consoles and the games that were released.
Yeah.
Obviously they did still come out slightly before the Saturn and PlayStation 1, but they were about the closest thing they had to a competitor before the N64 come out, which was quite a bit later. So yeah, Ridge Racer, near perfect package. I mean, if you're somebody who's young and you listen to these podcasts and you want to play like a historical game that you probably will still like, even though you've never played it before, and you don't mind obviously the graphics of 1994, 95, then pick up a PS1 and pick up Ridge Racer. The thing is, it's not a rare game, is it, as well?
No,
I mean, you'll probably get a decent, complete, good condition one for a tenner. You'll pay much more the higher up the condition, and you may pay a little bit more than that. You might look 15, but you won't pay an absolute fortune for Ridge Racer 1. If you're not too bothered, you might even pick up a loose disc, and it's such a simple game to play and get into that you don't really need an instruction manual for this game. It's just, in fact, a good chance if you buy a PS1 now from eBay, it'll come with at least one game, and that game will be Ridge Racer. So
do you know if it was released on the Sony PlayStation Classic? I can't remember if it came.
I think
I would have thought.
I would have thought. I'm quite sure there definitely was a Ridge Racer Revolution because I remember picking it up and nearly having it, nearly buying that one.
No,
so,
I don't mean the classic discs. I mean the
PS1.
console.
Oh.
The Sony.
Oh, the service.
No, the console. The Sony PlayStation console, little mini console.
Oh, I don't know. See, I mean, to be fair, if you had the choice of that one or Rev, I would have went with that one still over Revolution.
Yeah,
better track.
absolutely. Yeah.
I mean, Revolution comes with a couple of extra cars, a couple of the Devil and the Angel, the extra the Devil and the Angel.
Some good music tracks on there as
and
well.
some great tracks in its own right and that and all. But like, I think if you're going to pick one, I would have just picked the original. But then why wouldn't you just have both really? Because they're good enough. They're both good enough in their own right that like. I would have both of them. I mean, which we did.
I think it was criminal that it never released a dual pack with both on the same disc. Because I mean, the only thing they would have had the issue with was Red Boot audio, but they could have later on in the life of the PlayStation, they made it. I think it was probably MP3 or some other.
A lot of later PS1 games after 98,
audio.
They stopped being 98 or 99. They stopped being Red Boot audio anyway.
Yeah, that was it.
But like I say, that's my review. 9 out of 10 for Ridge Racer, the highest score I've given yet in our podcasts, and I feel wholly deserved. It's unusual now because I mean, I'm a bit of a game collector myself, and I tend to collect like a lot of different game series and that, which is certain types. And I've never collected Ridge Racer games, but it's just a game that I've grew up with, so I've got a lot of love for. So even though it's not something I sort of like spent my whole life collecting, it's a game that sort of definitely formed me middle sort of console years, if you want to call it that, you know. So, and it stood out to me, and we played it all the time. And if I weren't playing it, I was listening to music. Anyway, Mark, your review, mate.
Well, for me, I mean, Ridge Racer holds an awesome and hell of a lot of nostalgic feelings for us, in the sense that it was probably one of the first. It probably was the first 3D game, other than Star Fox, that I played properly at home. Now, Glenn mentioned earlier on when he got the PlayStation, he got Twisted Metal, Destruction Derby, and Ridge Racer. Now, Ridge Racer was the one that I was more excited about playing over the other two. And I remember just playing it, being terrible at it at first, but quickly learning how to be quite good at it, to the point where I think within a couple of weeks I'd unlocked everything, the Devil Car and that, you know. And this game, you know, I'd never played the arcade game at that point, I don't think. So that was the first true Ridge Racer experience for me. And I remember just being blown away. Every time I put it on, I'd be excited to get it on. I'd be excited to wake up so I could play
I'd be excited just to load in Galaxian. Yeah, I mean, you were having a class little mini game there that played just like the original anyway. And that we haven't even started the main event yet. And by playing that in a certain way and being good at it, you unlock amazing secrets.
Cars, yeah. But it was such a good game. I mean, look, I didn't, back then I was, what, 10? No, 12?
It'd be about,
13, something like that. I didn't know about frame rates. I didn't have a clue what 60 frames per second, 30 frames per second
Simpler
was.
times.
I didn't care that the textures weren't as good as the arcade and stuff like that. Or what I could see in front of me was this amazing 3D game that felt really real, and I was the coolest driver in the world. That's how it made you feel. And not on top of that, you know, this was the days when the rave music was still huge. You know, like the techno that was in there, it was amazing music. And it was just a game that made you feel good playing it. And this week, I felt good playing it again. You know, I can look back at it now. You know, I play a lot of Forza. I played a lot of Gran Turismo, and before they got crap, in my opinion. And you know, racing games are probably the one genre that's come a long way, more than anything else, in my opinion. Graphically, you know, physics, stuff like that. It's where you can really shine on what you can do with the consoles of the current generation and stuff. But Ridge Racer is special. You can just always go back and find some fun in that game for me. I think 20 years' time, I'll still be going back and playing Ridge Racer because it's that good of a game. I
wanted to add something as well, just to Mark's, before Mark finishes off his review. It's just, again, it goes back to what I said about how much of a great conversion Ridge Racer was. Now, if you just go back to the 80s for a second, we'll use a game I've been mentioning all the way through, which is Outrun. I mean, the hardware of that time could never dream of replicating the arcade. The home hardware could never dream of replicating the arcade hardware of the time, you know. So, I mean, a lot of people in that day and age, say in 1987 when Outrun basically came out, on the computers, you probably had a Spectrum or a Commodore 64. I mean, if you were rich, you might have had an Amiga or an Atari ST, and they were just coming out then. So, say you had a Speccy, which is what most people had. There's no way you could even get anywhere close to the arcade experience at all. I mean, you're playing 10 out of 10 for effort from the developers, but you were literally playing a very pale imitation of a game that just had no hope. It just like compared to the arcade game. Plus, again, the cultural difference as well of European developers who, to be quite frank, didn't give that much of a fuck when it came to quality control. And I mean, there was a lot of time constraints as well, so I can't blame them fully for that. But when we played these conversions through the years, going back to the computer era and that, they had no hope, So with the advent of definitely like Mega Drive and Super Nintendo, but really, 100% kicked in once you got the PlayStation and to some degree the Saturn as well. You had like near perfection, I mean, you couldn't get better than that also.
Yeah, so for me, like I say, Ridge Racer is special. It's not rose tinted glasses. It's still
it's
still
playable.
holds the same fun that
Still
I had
very
back
playable.
in the day. And the graphics, you look back on it and you think, 1994, yeah, it looks rough. You can emulate it, you can make it look prettier, but it doesn't need to be made look prettier. The game is as what it was, and it's it does its job perfectly, and it's all about the fun with Ridge Racer, and it delivers it in spades.
Definitely.
It's excellent. So I think for me, it probably sounds like a 9.5, but I can't. I've got to give it a 9 because I need to reserve. And I'm not like you. I will give 10s, but there's a couple of games in my head that will get a 10.
I don't know if I can never give a 10.
But Ridge Racer has to be a 9 for me as well. It's a fantastic game. And if you haven't played it, you've got to get out there and even if you have to emulate it, which I'm not going to say I don't condone or do condone, because sometimes it is just easier, especially if you can't pick it up somewhere else, or if Namco don't want to sell you a copy of Ridge Racer, fair enough. But, get it played, enjoy it, take it in. You'll understand what we're talking about straight away. It's just a really, really bloody good game. And a better version in the arcade, in my opinion. So...
Yeah. Without a doubt, yeah.
And failing that, get yourself a PSP and play Ridge Racer 2, because, wow, that's probably the best version of them all for me. It is the best. You need to play that one, Glenn.
I probably will at some point.
I think that probably does us for today, mate. And we'll see you guys next time. I hope you enjoyed the episode. As always,
Glad you listened.
Please give us a like, subscribe, comment. Drop us some comments over so we can have a chat with you. Tell us what you feel about Ridge Racer. Any other games you might like to see.
Yeah, give us a few ideas. You might see them covered.
And if it's a good comment, if it starts a good discussion, we will read it out in the podcast and have a proper chat about it. And we'll hopefully see you next week. So see you soon.
Thank you. Thanks. And good night.
Bye now.